Good, Sash. How are you all doing? Here we are. The podcast team is back with another episode for you. We have a special guest, Giselle Ramon Soberan, is here with us to talk all about the work that she does and so much more. If you've never heard of her, you don't know much about her work, you're definitely going to learn so much about what all of that entails. Of course, we've got Napoleon here with us as well. So shout out to Napoleon, checking in from Akamard Autumn. Joet. So thank you all so much for being here with us today. And I'm going to give Napoleon, let him kind of chime in for you all, and then we'll have Giselle introduce herself.
Yeah, it's good, Dash, everybody. Thank you all for joining us and inviting us into your homes or wherever you may be. My name is Napoleon. Like Tina said, I'm here out in the Autumn Juvid northern area, which is also called Tempe, Arizona State University. So I'm really happy to be a part of this conversation and also just having our excited to learn more from our guest here. So, yep, sup.
All right. So, Giselle, if you can go ahead and let the listeners know a little bit of who you are, your background, where are you from?
Sure. Skikdash Aniap Jiggy, Dr. Giselle Ramon-Sauberan Chap Walk Amachid. So, good day. My name is Dr. Giselle Ramon-Sauberan, and I come from the Sanavir community on the Thanatam Nation. I just recently graduated this past May from the University of Arizona with my doctoral degree, my PhD in American Indian Studies with the minor in journalism. And currently, I teach at Thanatam Community College. I'm faculty within the Thanatam Studies program there, and primarily teaching Autumn history and culture. And I also teach an Autumn food systems class as well.
Wow, yes, Dr. Giselle.
I was telling
That's
everybody because sometimes people have a hard time pronouncing my name, and I have two last names. So I just go by Dr. J.
Dr. J.
I was just about to mention that. I was like, I know you're a doctor, but I don't know about the last name. I don't want to be like, it's either the one or the other wrong. But Dr. J is good. Thank you.
Mhm.
Yeah. All right. Well, starting from the beginning, when you decided to attend college, was it something that was always encouraged to you? Or did you just kind of have that, thought that this is what I want to do? Um, how did that process go for you?
So I would like to say that I am a proud second generation University of Arizona Wildcat and a three-time graduate from U of A. And my parents were my encouragement. They are now retired, but they taught K through 12. And so there was no doubt that, I was going to go to college. It was just how I was going to do it. Was I going to go straight to university? Was I going to go to a 2 year, then transfer over? But, again, education was very important in my home, and I essentially grew up in the classroom with my parents. And when my mom was teaching at Indian Oasis Primary School, my brother, sister, and I all, drove with her to campus and, attended school. And so we'd always get there early. And again, I was in the classroom all the time. And then as I got older, I would help my dad set up his classroom. He taught within Sunnyside Unified School District. And so, again, always having that be part of my life. And it's kind of funny because I didn't think I would become a teacher, honestly. But that was my calling, and I'm really glad that I did. But yeah, again, that was just for me. Again, you're gonna go to college. The goal is to, my parents would say to me, the goal is, to better yourself, do something that you love, and have a career so you could support yourself, and if you have a family and, all of that good stuff. And so I actually graduated early from high school, and I started taking classes early, like dual enrollment classes at Pima Community College. And so I started there, and then worked my way up to earning my associate's degree in liberal arts, and then I transferred to University of Arizona, where I studied journalism and earned my bachelor's degree. And then after that, I decided that I wanted to take some time, travel. So I did, and I was in Italy. I also lived in Seattle for some time, and then of course doing journalism work. And then I lived in Oklahoma for a couple years, and then I finally came back and decided to work on my master's. And then once I was about to be done with my master's degree, there was a few instructors or professors that said, "What about getting a PhD? Have you ever considered it?" And at first I was like, "No." I was like, "No, thank you." And just because of the coursework and the time. And so but again, I just it stuck with me, even though I said no at first. And I started talking to my family, because they're my number one supporters, and all of them said, "Well, you have the opportunity, and if that's something you want to consider, we'll support you 100%." And so with that, I decided to go straight from my master's into my PhD program. Um, and then, 2 years into my PhD program, I had my daughter Lydia, and then pandemic hit, and then all of these different challenges. But I stuck with it, even though there was times I had to essentially just wait and just say, especially during the pandemic, I couldn't interview, I couldn't access certain information because I couldn't go to those different facilities. So I just again waited until I could finish. And my dad was a big part of that, because he said, "What's," every time updating, with those updates, "So what's going on?" "Oh, so," and I try to be like, "I kind of did this and that." But he's like, "We need to find time for you to finish this." And I'm like, "I know." So with his help, though, he was like a writing coach, and we sat down, and we'd allot so much time together during the weeks, and then we'd work on my different parts of my project, also known as a dissertation, to get to those final stages, and actually graduate. And I think part of me is still sitting there. I have those moments of like, I'm done. Like, I'm actually done. And it's hard to believe, and I'm still processing, because it was such a long road going from my master's straight into my PhD, and altogether it was 9 years.
Wow, yes, that's a long time, but I'm sure it takes a while to kind of think about all the things that you're so used to doing, right? And now it's like a whole different transition to all the things you've worked toward now. But going backwards a little bit, how did you know that you were able to afford college? For anybody out there who may have those thoughts of like, how can I even afford college?
That's a really good question. And for Don Autumn, we're very fortunate that we have our scholarship program, which is now called our Education Assistance Program, which is there to help pay for tuition, give you a living stipend, along with paying for books and gas if you live off campus. And so that was my main support of financial support when I was going for my undergrad. And then I still utilize the services for my master's and my PhD, but also to knowing that there are scholarships out there that, whether it's within my program, within the college, because I was under social behavioral science college, again, knowing that there is funding available and just seeking that out. And so I did that at certain times, and I'm really grateful for American Indian Studies department, because they would do a call out and say, hey, um, we have funding for anyone that needs it for tuition, or is looking for a job. We have funding set aside. And so I always took advantage of those opportunities. And then certainly when I became a PhD student, I had the opportunity to be a graduate teacher assistant, and then also a graduate research assistant. So that was really helpful because I was then employed by U of A. And excuse me, let me start that over. I was employed by University of Arizona, and then I had tuition reduction. So again, there's different ways of how you can, go to the university and have scholarships, or work part-time and have that tuition reduction. And but again, just seeking those out and saying, hey, you know what, I need help to pay for school. And I'm really proud to say this, that I walked away with my PhD with no debt. And so not many can actually say that, but I am really grateful for the Thanatha Nation that they have that service for tribal members. And also, too, I would just work other jobs here and there. Through my master's, I was actually working. I had the scholarship assistance from the Thanatha Nation, but I was also a substitute teacher. And so on Fridays, I didn't have school or anything. So that's how I'd get some extra cash. And then through my PhD, after I was done with those GTA and GRA, then I took on my position at Thanatham Community College. So, but yeah, again, scholarships. There's definitely plenty out there for students to apply for. And then also, to, there is free tuition for Native American students now. So that's something that's really big too here in Arizona.
Oh,
A
yeah, go
quick
ahead, Napoleon.
question. Um, well, thank you for your introduction and everything, and your journey, and sharing with us your um, when the what where I work at too is like sort of advocating for students, maintaining their retention and staying in school. And we always hear about the financial part. What I'm curious about, all these students are coming from different areas. Like, how did you balance, like, the finances, but even balancing yourself, like our himdak, our, our way of life, our you mentioned you had a family during that time, and I can relate to that because I have a 12-year-old too, and that takes up a big part of, like, life happens, right? So, and especially during when you're doing this research and these really intense things, you're going from one mindset to a whole nother. It's like, oh yeah, this and this. So how did you also keep that balance within, yourself, your family, the community? Like, you're talking about the responsibilities, all these things. How did you, for those folks who are interested, it's just like, financially, okay, I can do this, I have this opportunity, but also that balance within, like, walking into institutions and stuff like that.
Yeah, sure. So, of course, I grew up with more of our traditional side with our Himathug, with a little bit of Catholicism mixed in there. But yeah, that really being instilled in me since I was little. And understanding that to be healthy and successful is to have that balance. And so there were plenty of times that I had to definitely step back from something and do a reset, or somehow be able to find that balance again, because it's hard, it's challenging. And especially full time being a mom, and then also I'm a proud auntie and being there for my nieces. And and then school, and then everything else I do, that was hard. But really, my family was what kept me going, and were there every step of the way with me. Anytime I needed to work on my paper, do research, anything like that, I could go drop off my daughter Lydia with my mom, and but I think also too my parents, and with their backgrounds in education, always having those check-ins and knowing if they hadn't heard from me in a couple days, or within a week, to call me and talk to me, and always knowing the right things to say. And so having that support, but also too, knowing that there were going to be times, because I try to be that person, like, oh, I can do everything on my own, or it's okay, I can balance it all, but it's okay to ask for help. And I think that's the biggest thing that, I had to face, is that, yeah, even though I could do it all on my own, there's people there to help. It's okay to say, I need help with this, can you pick up Lydia, can you, and of course my family's like, yeah, don't worry about it, what, if you need like 3 hours, that's okay to do that. And so that was a big part of it. But I think also too, for me, I love teaching. And so when those days where I would be writing and doing my research, and then I had to step away and then go into the classroom or teach virtually on Zoom, it was kind of, in a way, like my way to then take a break, do what I love, share my knowledge, and then I could go on with the day, And so having it wasn't, to me, hard to shift from one to the other, because everything's related. My dissertation research was on the history of land and water in Sanavir. So I always, was updating my students along the way, of, this is what I've been working on, or look at, I found out this cool fact, or this photo, and so different things with them. So being able to share, wasn't hard. But, there were definitely times where, like I said, it was challenging, you know, mind, body, and spirit. And I have a really great partner. His name is Jesse. And so there was times where Jesse's like, I think you need to like step away. Like, let's go for a drive, let's go do this. And, you know, I would, and it was exactly what I needed at times. And then also, with us raising our little family, he always reminded me that there's always tomorrow. And I'm like, I need to get that on like a sign and hang it, because, it's always a good reminder, because I'd be trying to jam pack as much as I can into a day. I'd be tired, but then, he would say that to me, and I'd be like, okay, you're right, and I'd step away, and then we'd have dinner and watch something on Netflix. And so, that's, again, having that support from my partner and my family was what really got me through all of this. And and then at the end, when I was actually done and I was talking to my advisors, my committee, because when you're a PhD student, you have a group of advisors, committee members, or what they called. And I just started crying, and I was like, I was done, and and it was just like that release of everything. But it was like a good cry. But again, there were other times too where it was like, I had to step away, because I was getting emotional because of just the what it takes to get through this. And I love challenges, but this was probably, I'd put this up there with actually having my daughter. It was that challenging and hard. And I was joking with someone the other day, I'm like, yeah, my dissertation is like my second child, because it really does feel like it, with everything that I went through. But yeah, and I think also too, to the last thing is that um definitely with him a thug, my family, it's a big thing for us every summer, to take time out of our busy schedules, or whatever we have going on, to go and harvest. by that saguaro fruit. So that was always a time for me to, you know, reflect, as we are supposed to for our new year. But it was just, again, that those time that time every year, that was my time to sit there and reset, and step away from everything and just be around my family and do something that we've been doing for time immemorial, and being part of that. And then also stepping up as I've gotten older, to learn how to make the sito, the syrup. And then also learning about how to do, um, just the whole process, and learning about that. And my mom handing it off to me and saying, okay, you know how to do it, right? And I'm like, no, wait, what? But again, taking on those responsibilities I have as an Otham woman, and stepping up. And that's been another part of, again, balancing that. But also knowing, again, that when it comes to work and other things, that there is tomorrow, but there's priorities are things that need to take place. And so making sure that I always took time out for us to go and harvest. And also within the next day or two, also making time to again go clean and get it all prepared to make syrup. And then I'm hoping next year that we'll be able to do jam. And eventually I do want to learn how to make the ceremonial wine. But again, just learning and making sure that I'm continuing with our himatug. And I'm a life learner, as many of us are, but just making sure that I don't forget that, and having it really at the forefront of everything that I'm doing.
Thank you so much for sharing that. Yeah, it's just definitely takes a lot of balance, especially in academia, because there's so much that could just come into place in life itself. Life changes or small changes, it is a constant working thing to try to get some balance when you're in academia. But thank you for so much for sharing that. And when you talked about your journalism um, career and what you did, and I've read some of the things even when you were in it in that time. Articles were coming out and I'd read them, and which is really cool. And then I remember when you were in the journalism, I think you were a teacher assistant, and then you invited me to come and be talk to the class about their podcasting schooling and stuff like that, which was really cool. um, but aside from the teaching, with your background in journalism, what is it about writing that you enjoy so much, and you have enjoyed that you went that route?
Yeah, I originally, well, growing up, I wanted to be a lawyer because I could argue really well. And then after that, I don't know, there was like a couple other professions that I said I was going to be. And then I landed on wanting to be a writer. And I still hope to be able to write a few books within my lifetime. And then beyond being an author, I was introduced to journalism when I was in the fourth grade. So, Channel 4 KVOA has Bare Essential News for Kids. And they were looking at the school I was going to, Pitcher Rocks Intermediate. They were asking, does anybody want to be part of this? And I read the little blurb on it, and I said, I do. And so it was me, and I think two others, because it was fourth, fifth, and sixth grade at that school. And so they just had one representative from each grade. And so what we did is that we would write an essay or something, that whether it was for class or something that we did on our own as interest. And then our advisor would send it to Channel 4. And then we would come in and they would shorten whatever we wrote, and then we'd read it on a teleprompter. And then it would show up on Saturdays during Saturday morning cartoons. And it was just a little segment. and I fell in love with journalism and writing at that point. And also, too, I believe it was the fourth grade, I won my first writing essay contest on cooperation. And so I still have my mom, I think, still has a little trophy. And again, it was just something that I really like to do. And so I stuck with the bare essentials. And oh, and also to the article that or well, what you read on the teleprompter would then be made into an article, and then it would come out in the magazine. And so with, has the polar bear on the front. And so that's what I did. And then every year we got to go for a tour at the TV station and get to see some of the journalists there. And so it was really cool. And so after that, I stuck with it, and any chance I had to be published, I would. I wrote poetry. I was part of different poetry workshops and other things. And then high school is when I really got into journalism. And I think for me, with journalism is that I really like to talk to people, and I really like to tell people stories. And then when I finally got to U of A and the journalism program there, it turned more into, my focus was on Indian country, because for us Native and Indigenous folks, there was a lot of um, negative spotlight on us in news, and you'd only hear, we'd only show up when something bad would happen in the newspaper, or there was a tragedy. It's like, well, what about all the good? And so I really started turning my focus to telling these positive stories, these amazing stories that people were willing to share with me about their lives, or whether that was within their personal lives or professional, or even something, that, like, an event that they had put together along with others. I wanted to tell those stories, and I really wanted to shed light on that. And so that's what I did. And I wanted to also have more Native and Indigenous voices within media, because there were so many times I'd read articles and it would be about something, pertaining to a certain tribe, but there would be no tribal members interviewed. And it's like, that does not make any sense. And so and again, I was like, we need to do something. And I again decided that that's what I wanted to do. And when I was an undergrad at U of A, I was in a writing class, and our professor at the time was like, well, what is a big goal that you want to do? What's something? And I said, I want to write for Indian Country Today Media Network. And at that time, they were in New York. And so he said, what's stopping you from reaching out to them right now? Like, after he read my paper. And I said, I don't know. I'm like, he said, you should reach out. And I did we had different assignments, and so we had just turned one in. And that he said, the one you just did, he said, send it to them. He said, and see if they'll publish it. And I said, really? And he said, yeah. And so I did, and they published it, and they asked me to start being a freelance journalist for them. And so I did, and I was there with them until um, they decided to shut down. And so I think I was with them 7 or 8 years, I want to say, being a freelance. And I would share ideas. Sometimes they'd reach out to me, and so it was a really good relationship. And I got to meet some really amazing people and talk to people from all over the world, and tell their stories. And again, I really liked that. And I had to hang up my hat with that, because of they shut down. But also too, I was focusing on my graduate journey. And so definitely still a journalist at heart, my first love and passion. And I've had opportunities to get things published here and there, but again, I always say, you know what, I think at some point I'm going to go back to the newsroom, because I really liked it. And journalism took me a lot of places too. So I had internships, Farmington, New Mexico, St. Cloud, Minnesota, Seattle, Washington. And then I studied abroad in Italy through the journalism school at the University of Arizona, and I had opportunity to do photography, journalistic photography, and then I think I had something else too that I did with journalism there. So that was really awesome to have all those experiences through that. But, again, it's a passion of mine that I really like. And even with my master's and my PhD, journalism was brought into both of those. And my master's included a biography on the late Dr. Bunny Fontana, who was a Southwest anthropologist who spent his life's work writing about O'odham, specifically my community, Sanavir, and also the Sanavir Del Bac mission. And so journalistic skills, interviewing, talking to folks, and then with my PhD and my dissertation that I did, interviewing and telling these the stories of folks, because a lot of what I wrote about for my research, I wasn't born yet. So having these community members and my relatives even tell the story, and you hearing it directly from them throughout my research and my paper was really important. So again, it's a first love and a passion that I've had and utilized and will continue to use, and really hopeful that I can be able to teach a journalism class one day and have students really have a chance and opportunity to experience journalism, and also learn about what it means to write for Indian country today, and the importance of it.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. I think we're long overdue for autumn led news coverage, newspaper, even if they're tiring of the runner. Um, I think, yeah, I just want to, that's inspiring, because that first passion is always there burning. So I think we definitely need something. I'm just throwing that out there. I don't know, like logistics, but that would be so cool, because look, our whole initiative is telling our stories, and we try to find that connection between, Tono, Akamur, Akchin, Hiachin, those who like, such a vast um, area. But if we have like people like, folks like you who know how to do all like a lot of that stuff, uh, it's really cool. So when I learned that you were a journalist at first, I was like, oh, that's cool, because that sort of like that foundation allows you to be able to tell these stories in a different way, just like how we do in like podcasting. You do it on the grounds, like perspectives and all these things. So thank you for sharing that. I appreciate it.
Yeah, and I think also too it matters too who's writing these stories and what the topics are, and just to elaborate a little bit more, when the announcement from Trump came out about the border wall, I was contacted by Indian Country today and said, "Can you write the story about this? We need your expertise at this. We need you to talk to Autumn, because that's whose perspective and opinion matter most." And I remember I was just like in the middle of, my program, and I was like, I really don't have time, but I put things aside and I said, this is important and I have to do it. And so I did write 3 articles. It was a series of articles about it, and it was all Autumn perspectives and opinions, which was really awesome because I didn't see that at the time elsewhere. Like people may have, included, oh, there was a statement by this or that, but I really, that hit close to home, and our people. And so I really wanted to tell it the right way, and also including the history. And I think people are like, oh, this is something they're dealing with. I'm like, no, this isn't the first time we've had to deal with something. It's been going on since 1850s. So, telling that and having that opportunity, that was really awesome. And then there was other stories too that I highlighted from um, for Autumn, and then I even for in Canada and other places too. But yeah, again, that the Autumn perspective is really important, and there's not many of us that are journalists that are Autumn that are out there. So But that's one of the things I always encourage youth. I'm like, we need more journalists, we need more, autumn, serving in all these different roles. You're our future leaders. Like, please, step up and consider these different, I guess you could say paths, journeys that you could take. And so, but yeah.
Yes. So amazing, amazing journey that you've had with your career in the academic world and what you're doing now. Um, and, you talked a little bit about your dissertation. And for those who may not know, what is a dissertation? What is the definition of a dissertation? What do you do with that? And when do you need to do a dissertation when you're in school? Can you explain what exactly that is, and why is that something that you need to complete a doctorate?
Sure. So for um, a PhD program, you come in, you start your program, and you come into what is first your class load. So you complete all of your classes, whatever's required for that particular um, topic major that you're pursuing. And once you're done with your classwork, then there's other stages of your your journey that you have to complete. And so you also have to do oral and written composition exams. And so for my particular program, American Indian Studies, I was given 4 questions, and each question had to be roughly 15 pages long, and I had a week to do this. And it's all pertaining to my interest in what I wanted to do ultimately for my research, and that was tough, very tough. I had a 3-month old at that time, so I was used to staying up long hours. But I was really grateful that my mother in law, she came to stay when I was writing. And so that is, it's a big challenge, and it's testing you, of course, and it's an exam. And so after you complete that, you meet your deadline, you turn it in. Then that the oral part of that is meeting with your committee, like I mentioned. You are able to select uh, four, 4 or 5, or 3 to 5, I should say, individuals, depending on your program, to be your advisors and to guide you and help you through your journey. And so you meet with them, they go over everything that you put together in those essays, those questions you had to answer, and you get a pass or fail with that. And it's challenging, it's meant to be tough. And certainly seeing where you're at, do you need more time, to go back and take another class on a specific topic relating to what you want to do? Are you like set and good to go? Are there recommendations? And so then once you get through that, you can start your dissertation research. And so a dissertation is it's a very long paper, a very long essay. And mine was about 180 pages, but it's based on research and on a particular topic. And there's different parts to it. So mine was heavily on history. It was on the history of land and water in Sanavir. And I remember coming to my advisor initially with the idea, and then he said, that's great, but you got to have a research part to it too. So then I had to figure out, well, how do I take what I'm doing with history and again have this like research component to it? And so it took a little bit of time, but it's your chance to do a project. And it is a requirement for you to graduate with your PhD. And so that this dissertation can look and be formatted in any way you see fit. Like mine included audio interviews, And then, I had my different chapters that were written out. Some it may be a video project that they put together. Again, it just all depends. And then certainly also too, there's the other option where it's not necessarily like this big long essay, research paper, however you want to describe it, but it could be like a series of long articles that you get published. Again, it just depends, but it's a lot of writing. And so when you pass your exams, then there's a process that you need to do to be approved for your research project, and especially for myself working with my community with the Thought Anthem Nation. I had to get approval, so that took about 6 months, I want to say, roughly, for me to get the approval, get support letters. I had to go before the Santa Fe District Council. Then I had to go to Legislative Council and seek approval there. And again, it took time. And I also had to go before the entire Legislative Council at one of their sessions, which was that I was really nervous. Usually I'm okay when I get up in front of, students, but legislative council, it was a bit intimidating. But I read my resolution, my research resolution, and so that was really an experience. And then I had to submit that to University of Arizona and submit paperwork there. And then finally, once everything was totally approved, had that approval stamp on it, I was able to start my process of research. And that took time. And, pandemic happened and really limited me on what I could do because, there were individuals I wanted to interview, and we did have Zoom, go to meeting and other platforms, but I really wanted to sit down and meet with these people and talk to them. And so I had to wait till things got better. um, but again, that research process was timely. But then once I finally was able to complete all my interviews and do everything, then the fun part starts. And that's when the writing starts. And so again, you can see, this alone took 7 years for me to complete. And again, it was just all these different steps you have to take and get through. And certainly did not plan for a pandemic, but had to again adjust to that for everybody's safety and their health. And still tried to do what I could, and I tried really hard to keep momentum. I didn't want to like completely just stop and say, oh well, I can't do anything right now. I kept trying, to do little things, because I just felt that if I stopped, then it would be really hard to start again. So I did what I could during that time, and continued on. And then there's also, with your dissertation, there's the many drafts that, and I laugh because I think one of my chapters, I went through like 10 different versions of it with my committee, because they just were like, I know you could, this is good, but I know you could add more. I know there's, and they really challenged me, which was a good thing. And, certainly at the time, I didn't see it as a good thing. I was frustrated and I was like, what else can I put in here? But it all worked out. And, again, I realized later on, like, why they had me work so hard on that. That I think it was my chapter 1, what it was. But and then you had to go through all the revisions. And I actually had a chapter, it was about 45 pages long, and I had to redo the entire chapter. And I dreaded it, really. I was just like, I knew like the format and how it looked and the organization of it needed work, but I didn't think I had to like reorganize the whole thing. So if you can imagine doing that. But again, it was just learning along the way too. I'd never written anything this long. My master's thesis, which is also a long essay, that was 90 pages. And so this was double that. And again, going through all of the drafts and to the final stage. And even then, now that it's done and it's published, I look back at it and I still find myself like wanting to tweak things, move things around, and I'm just like, no, it's done. But certainly, you know, wanting people to read it, and so all of this that had to be done, but also to the thought process of, okay, what am I taking from my research to put in my paper, because not everything will fit. How do I um figure out what exactly to talk about? And I wanted it to make it too, so that people were understanding what I was saying, because there's times in my graduate journey that I would read dissertations or other published articles, and I would have no clue what was being said, and I was just like, what is this person talking about, because of their word choice, because of how um they're describing different things. And I didn't want that. I wanted everybody to fully understand, sorry, what I was saying. And so that was another part to it too, and having information shared with me, and then me using journalistic skills and just my writing abilities to then take, okay, this is explained to me, so then how do I then explain this on paper, right? So just to share a little bit about everything that I just a preview of everything that I had to think about and experience during my journey.
Yeah, and I feel like, you what you're doing now, I mean, I'm sure it pretty much explains your research and your work, and you did this little mini presentation tour that you did, which I actually had an opportunity last night. I was telling Napoleon earlier that because he was saying that he had watched the video of one of your presentations, and I watched the one that you did with the Amaranth Museum. But I was at the gym on the tread and on other machines watching it on YouTube. But it was really good. Like, you did such a good job at thoroughly and simply explaining your research, and the way that you structured it from one part of it to the next part was genius. It was just it just flowed so well. So good job. I mean, that was amazing. And and just, I'm really thankful that I got to be a small part of your research. Even during that time, I was just like, wow, this is so cool, and I couldn't wait to see what the end result was going to be. And now here it is, and it's just really good work, Dr.
Thank
J.
you. Thank you.
S- um so during your years in education, what inspired you to do your dissertation specifically on this topic of the history of the land and water in Oaxaca?
Let me take a step back. Actually, even for my masters, I have really great supporters in my family, and between my mom Janice Ramon, and my auntie Julie Ramon Pearson, and my other auntie um, Wanji Ramon Butt, they were really people I could go to and ask, like, what should I do my research on, because I wanted it to be for our people. I wanted it to be a resource, and whatever that may be at that time when I was trying to figure it out. And I'm like, what do we need, as a community, as a nation? And so talking with them and getting ideas. And so that's how, for my thesis that came about of, why not tell Dr. Bunny Fontana's story, because the relationship he had was very different than other anthropologists with native, indigenous communities. And really, also to learning more about our neighbor who was, you know 5 houses north, on Mission Road, and also to having tribal members who worked with him highlighted. And so that's what I did. And so then when it came to my dissertation, I went to my auntie Julie and I said, what? Because we had conversations prior, and I had worked on some video projects for the Santa Vera Lati Association, and one of which was highlighting the history of land and water in Santa Vera. And so I did a 3-part video series of just talking about the district's involvement, um, my auntie as a knowledge keeper and all her time and what she did, and then also to an elder, Mike Enos, but and talking to him of his experience. And so it was really great. And after we had done the first recording with Mike, he actually passed away. And so we're really grateful that we're able to capture his story, about being an O'odham defender of land rights. And so that kind of stuck with me through that video multimedia project. And so, again, having those conversations with her afterwards, and I said, what should I do? Get ideas for me. And we started talking about, taking, yes, we're an oral society, but taking these stories and writing them down, because we felt that in our community it was time. And it's history, and it's important. And so there was no one document that had all of this information in there. It was really, oh, you got to go talk to, again, my auntie Julie. Oh, you got to go talk to so and so. Oh, this person was part of this, but they're no longer here anymore. So if you really wanted to know the history, you would have to take the time to go talk to people that are still around, and hear from them. And so, um that was a challenge. And also too, with my auntie Julie, again, everybody's like, oh, she's the person I go to. But for her, she's like, I'm not getting any younger, and I want to pass this knowledge on. And so I gladly stepped up and said, I want to know, because for me, I am a future Alati landowner in Santa Vera, and I always was curious when I was younger, but I didn't have that background. I didn't have the full history to understand why Alatis were upset at that time about a certain issue, or why this was a big deal, because again, there was nowhere for me to go find that out, right? Like where I could read it. And so, and it certainly wasn't being taught anywhere. So with that, that was a big part of it. And also too, I wanted to do something for my community, with my community. And community-based research is really something that was important to me. And so with completing my dissertation paper, I always say, when I'm talking to anybody in the community, I'm like, we did this. I didn't do this alone. You all helped me from the very beginning to achieve this. And we now have this document that is a resource. So if people want to learn, it's right here for them. And honestly, it's just the start of, I believe, my research as an O'odham scholar, my lifelong research. It's just, there's so many more ideas and things that I want to do from here. Jumping from my dissertation paper, whether it's, publishing different parts of it or expanding on it, because there's so much of the history. And at the very end of my paper, I did start talking about the future, but also too, like, thinking about that of, this is the history, well, this is what's going on now when it comes to water, when it comes to land, and expanding more on that in different ways. And certainly too, during my presentations all over Tucson and in Phoenix, and really sharing and having people have a better understanding of the history, because you can't understand the present or the future if you don't know the history. And so that was a really big part of why I wanted to do what I did. And again, having a resource, but also my paper be able to be used in education. And I'm really excited to actually use it in my classes coming up. And so that was another big part of it. But I wanted to tell these stories from these individuals. I wanted to again have all of this be put together, so people could pick it up and understand, or anytime they need to reference something, they have it there, so having it serve all these different purposes is what I really wanted. And I think also too, so not only to be educated, but also too, I think for some, um, that were in our leadership, they said, well, I don't know how to, you know tackle certain issues because I don't know much about what has happened in your community, right? Because they're from a different community district. So having that, and to help them professionally, so in their leadership positions, is another big part of it. But again, I didn't I at the time I was just like, I just want to put this together, and not realizing, you know all the different ways that it can serve, a purpose, and all these, different, like I said, professionally, for your own personal knowledge in a class, like so on and so forth. And definitely wanting, it to be shared with as many people, because there's always this running joke, is that you're the only person and maybe a few family members that are actually going to read your thesis and dissertation. But for me, I'm like, no, that's not the case for me. I don't want that. I'm like, I want to share it, and have as many people have it on their bookshelves as possible. And so again, that's why I really, wanted to create something meaningful, and I'm really proud of my community and all of their help in this every step of the way, and for those that were willing to be interviewed. And I interviewed about 15 people to get their, whether it was, stories of these certain historical events I wrote about, or just, picking their brains on, like, what do you know, what don't you understand, what would you like to know, because that was another part to it too. Is like, I know what I know and what I don't know, but is that the same as everybody else, and so really taking their opinions and their input to make sure that I did achieve that within the paper too. So it was a process too. With, again, like, all you think about it now, and then now that I'm able to, like, digest and look back on everything too, and how I did different things, there's a lot of different, like I said, the process for research, the process for writing, and then now thinking about, like, what's next, and where I'm going from here. And believe me, I have a whole list of all these great ideas that I have, that I kept having to be like, no, I gotta wait till I'm done. And now that I'm done, I'm like, ooh, okay, like, what on the list can I start with? And I think one of the big things for me is publications, and having, certain sections or a chapter, published from my dissertation. And I think also too, eventually, maybe down the road, making my dissertation into a book, that's not off the table. But certainly too, I want to make sure that everybody's on board with that, um, all those that helped me put my dissertation paper together. But again, that's I think the first thing. And there's some other projects too that I want to be able to help, be part of, and help and share my knowledge. So we'll see, what's in the future, and how I'll be able to utilize what I learned through my graduate journey, or journeys, I should say, and where I go from here.
Napoleon, did you have any questions or any thoughts?
Yeah, the I was telling Tina earlier that I was watching your video from two separate times that you presented. I think your hair was green at that time. um, when one of them, and then the one recently that you did at the hymn dot key. I think that's the one. Was that the one? There was another some bits and parts of that, and just kind of hearing the difference, like you were talking about drafts and stuff. Writing thesis and things like that. And one of the things I mentioned to Tina was just like how that embodiment and connection that you had with um, the newspapers and the things that were documented, the photos, capturing those, or not capturing, but seeing those kind of like brought out and lived and being in this history as a big part that really stuck out to me. Because I don't know why I was like interested in these like documents of photographs and autumn things that were built back then, or families. And so very rarely do I see anything of like lineages being documented in that way. And so I thought that was really cool to that you're able to see that and be like, oh, that's actually your she actually has those already. Like, yeah, ask her about it. And how much of that is so important in our work that we do too as academics to really um, document those things and bring it back when it's needed. And I thought that was just so the most well, to me that was like the most powerful part of the because like the history and everything is always never like that's happened, right? So it's never
Hmm.
really gonna change. But when you see those photos, you're like, then you relive those memories and like, dang, they were out doing this. And so I thought that was really cool. And again, yeah, this commending you on a lot of the work and everything that you're able to bring back, because it also helps, like I connect with not knowing much about the Walk District. So only from like bits and pieces when we talk about language and culture and things of that, like our different dialects, history, how it politically happens. And I think you did a really awesome job of politically putting, this is what was going on, the Gadsden Purchase, all these separations, these different ways. And it's such a small community, but large impact, because you mentioned, we're a very small community, but, you know, there was a lot going on.
Yeah.
Families were involved, senators, state representatives, being in different, you're whether you're rolled member, you're just a person in the community living there, all these different players. So I think that was just a lot, and I think that was just really my thoughts when I was seeing your video, and then obviously like just looking up some of the history and just getting that knowledge. And I hope that other like our listeners like encouraging to read your work, and that it doesn't sit there. I had sort of the same thing when I was writing my thesis, but I ended up doing a practicum. But that was sort of the same thing. It's just that joke too. It's just like, yeah, we're gonna change the world and do all this, and it's just sitting there, like, oh, that was cool. That was a good time in life. But yeah, so I think
Right.
for like it's cool because like as native people, like our stories, like we hold on to some of those, even though they're like snippets of the so what do they call the past, but we bring out those dissertations like, oh, great auntie, wrote this, and this is how we can use it as a tool to really like build and for future generations, like you're mentioning, and teaching and kids of that nature. So yeah, that's just my thoughts on that. Then thank you for sharing on a lot of that, the perspectives and how you went through it.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. And yeah, my family was also, and throughout my research as well, and my hu'ud, she would pop up every now and then. And it was really funny at times because I would go tell my mom and my sister-in-law, did you see this? Did you know? She was in this. She was, photographed and, interviewed. And so we were finding things that we didn't even know about. Or, my mom would be like, oh, you found that? And so it was really funny. And I think also, too, for me, I was able to take the stories that my hu'ud, my maternal grandmother, shared and put them in my dissertation. So it's the having those multi-generation, and seeing that, and having that knowledge passed down and being able to put that. But there, and also too, there were times that, I was tired. I was just, getting frustrated, or, something. And she would pop up in the right times to just kind of give me that reminder to keep going. And again, whether it was in an article I'd find or a quote from her, and again, it was just really, I pay attention to that with our spirituality, and and it was a big part of like also motivation to keep going, because there were plenty of times I wanted to just give up and be like, you know what, I'm fine with how far I made it. Like I might just hang my hat up, but it again, from her, and then even also to my late auntie Wanji, and having them again pop up and kind of give me that, second wind or just that motivation. And so and then also to finding photos of like my great grandparents, and who my grandma talked about, my who talked about, but I never had seen photos of them, and then discovering photos in published books, that we didn't even know that those photos were used in there. And then also to Arizona Historical Society, I went there and searched through, different boxes they had. And so finding photos of also, you know, um, family, friends, and others, in Santa Vera community, and sharing those, because we have a Facebook page for our Santa Vera community. And so I would update people and say, "Hey, do you know I found this? I found that." And then people are like, "Wow, I didn't even know that photo existed." So that was also another part to it too. And sharing all of those different photos, and then also the newspaper articles I found. And it's just interesting how connections happen and how things, unfold and come together. And so, again, those little reminders that I'm right where I need to be, and I'm, doing this, you know, um, for all the right reasons. And I need to keep on going, again. So with just thinking about things and having those times of encouragement. And so, but yeah, it made it that much more meaningful to me, because I had a direct tie to not only community, but all these events that happened. And I was teasing my auntie Julie, and I was like, I didn't even know you were part of all of these things that happened, you know. And I was like, I knew you were active, and you did your part, with this event, but I didn't know all of these other things. And she's like, yeah, and she's a very soft spoken, woman. And so it's just, it was something, well, that was a bit of a surprise to me. But again, I'm really glad I had all those times to sit down and talk with her. And I think with her alone, I have maybe, I don't even remember, probably 8 hours maybe of like audio. And a lot of it's just us kind of like going back and forth, and just me asking questions about family. So it was really an awesome experience.
Awesome. Yeah. So for those who may be trying to piece together the dissertation topic, we're talking about Dr. J's dissertation, which is on the history of land and water in Wakjukshan Sanavir community. And in her dissertation, she focuses on of course, the history, the historical part of it, what the Santa Cruz River was once like, what it looked like, how it was thriving, how it was, it was a whole river. And then what impacted that rivers, and how the stopping of, no water, no more water flowing through, how that impacted the O'odham in Santa Fe. And then just so much other things that kind of come into play with the land, and the water itself, and the history that it's had, some good, some not so good, the fighting that the O'odham did. When you mentioned the defenders, what was their name?
Autumn defenders of land rights,
Yeah,
or
and
defenders of autumn land rights. Sorry.
defenders of Autumn land rights, and why that organization, or that group was put together, just because of some potential folks trying to come in and build a whole city or community, and how the allotments came to play. That's also, again, the land portion of the dissertation is how that comes into play, and explaining what is allotment, how did that happen. And again, that happened back in history when the Mirtigan were um, getting Autumn to be more, I guess, in modern times, more contemporary with the work that they are doing. It's explained so much more better in there, but that's a big part of why her dissertation is specifically focusing on land and water, just because there's been so much with it historically, yeah, up until today. So where can people find your dissertation if they're interested and they want to read it?
You can actually find it on the University of Arizona Library website. Also, too, you can reach out to me directly, and I'll be happy to email it. It is also at Donathan Community College in the library there, and the Santa Vera Latte Association is also another place you can reach out to, and they can send you a copy, whether it's print or digital. And then I'm also wanting to provide a copy to the Himataki, the Cultural Center and Museum. So planting it in different places so you can be able to check it out. But certainly, if you want your own copy, I'm happy for you to reach out, email me, and I'll send you it.
Yes, definitely send us a copy. We love it. Once again, thank you so much for sharing. Um, so one more quick question in regards to your research. During your research, what was the most surprising piece of information or detail or story that you found or heard?
It's a good question. Let's see. If I'm thinking, as I think back on everything that I researched and found, I think for me, one of the big parts was piecing together what transpired with the proposed land development that was brought in the late 1970s by the Santa Cruz properties, and um, an individual, Jim Rothschild Jr., was at the forefront of that. And I had known a bit about it, but really diving into the details and the fact that the Tucson Weekly, which was a bit different back in the late 1970s into 1980s on their coverage. And so finding one of my former journalism professors at that time was a PhD student, and she worked on a series of all these articles that highlighted what was going on throughout the whole time with the proposed land development, and tracking those down. And saying, well, where can I get a copy of all of them? I don't want just like one or two. I want the whole series of these articles. And contacting all these different people, and then finding them at our special collections at the University of Arizona, and being able to then have all of those and dive into that, because it's really interesting how there was actually a reporter in, I want to say, probably like the 60s, 70s, maybe early 80s, that their beat was to cover the Thanatam Nation, to cover Santa Vir. And so there was always coverage that we were in the news, of highlighting business developments, highlighting what was going on with the proposed land development, all of these different things. And so there's all these really neat and interesting articles. And so again, diving into that and finding that how this investigative uh, all these investigative articles were done and so detailed. And I'm just like, wow, if I didn't have these, like, how would I have told this section, along with weaving in the stories from the community members and my auntie. And so I think for me, that was just that part was having all of those details, all of that information, and being able to provide that throughout my dissertation paper, which was, to me, really amazing. um, because it's something I feel that a lot of um, the community members didn't know about. Unless you were there standing up and saying, no, we don't want this. Unless you were part of that group, the Defenders of Autumn Land Rights. It's like, if you unless you were really active in it, you know you didn't know much about it. And it's not like these articles are readily available either. So um to me, that was the most interesting, was finding all of that and being able to say, hey, this happened, and then doing this, like, chronological order of, this is what happened first, second, and then just the span of that time. It wasn't like, oh, the person, that company and that person who was ahead of it came and, took no for their answer and just left. They were really trying to build a city of 100,000 that would, be on, it would be south of where the Senator Delbach mission is. And I couldn't imagine that today. If you were to stand there, look north at the church, and then you turn around, and then you would have seen this city. And it was going to be on allotted land, and it was going to be partially on tribal land within the district. So, again, just I couldn't fathom it. And then it was even for them. That was another part to it. They just wanted the land and promised that we would become millionaires, which wasn't true at all. You know, so it's just one of those events, historical events, major events that happen pertaining to land, that I'm really glad I was able to find all of this information and put it together in a chapter. And I actually feel that every chapter that I wrote could be its own dissertation paper within itself. But I didn't want to do that. I really wanted to, again, have this one document where, you get a big chunk of what happened, and hopefully that will then spark interest for you to then go talk to somebody, or, start attending, a Lati association meetings if you're in a Lati, or, you know what I mean. I'm just hoping there's more that will come from reading these different chapters. And certainly also too, when I wrote about the Southern Arizona Water Rights Settlement Act, and there are many people that are no longer living that did help with that. But one of the lawyers, he lives in Albuquerque, and that's what he told me too. I was getting his input on what I had put together, and wanted him to read my draft. And that's what he told me. He's like, you could have just wrote about this, right? And I said, yes, I understand that, but I didn't want to. I was like, maybe, I was like, down the road, I'll like write more of just on that topic. But it was interesting, what I had to go and dig out, and even, like I said, what was covered with those different, the different topics, and whoever those journalists were, whether they're working for Tucson Weekly or Arizona Daily Star, or even when we had Tucson Citizen, as another paper, and having those different beats covered.
And thankfully, with the fighting of those certain Otham, because there were some Otham that were for that, 90-year lease, and from the developer, and believed that they were going to become millionaires, and that's what they wanted, right?
Yeah, that is. And it actually, Mike Enos Butt said it best, is that it really divided our community, because you had so many of those that saw dollar signs and, wanted and needed money to be able to provide in, for their families, and to live comfortably, and they thought, oh, this would take all my worries away, because I'd have this income coming in. Whereas others were like, no, this is not what it seems, and there's lies that are being told to you, and really reading the fine print and doing the math and everything, and realizing there's nowhere close to becoming a millionaire, with what is stated in those documents. That's not what was going to happen. And so, and again, also too, there wasn't like, oh, and you can come live in this city of 100,000. There wasn't, and you'd be promised anything. It was just like, no, you know what, you can have the money, we'll just take the land. And again, it was really hard on a lot of families, and even within leadership too, because there was leadership for Senator District and also the nation, or at the time we were called Papago tribe, and they were on board for this. So it's like, again, how I just couldn't imagine that time of how, the feelings, when everybody was in the room, where you have everybody that was not for it, these others that were for it, and even have tribal leadership that was for it. You know what I mean? And it was just kind of this interesting time. And I remember in that interview with Mike Guinness, but he even said that, it took some time. He said he's like, for me and my family members to be able to be on good terms and talk again, because of all of that transpired during that time. And so, and thinking about that, it wasn't just like, oh, this developer came in, but the effects of what that caused on my community were huge, and but again, I'm really glad for that group, the defenders of Autumn land rights, because they didn't give up. Because again, this wasn't something that just went away overnight. This was years upon years, and going, to court, and and staying up on all the facts, and going and promoting and saying, this is why you shouldn't, be for this, providing pamphlets with, all the information on there. I think there was even t-shirts that were made, which I wish, like, I wish that they were still around, and I'm really hoping that someone might have one, like, in a box, because that'd be really cool to see. But um all of, just being out there and educating folks, and even educating themselves. There were a lot of them that went to, I think, Pima Community College, and took classes so they could better understand what was at hand, what was at stake, and wanting to serve, and how, and again, figuring out how they could do that, and also to, I think, understanding, that was a big part of it, is understanding, you know what was presented to them, and thankfully there were others that had law backgrounds that came in to help. But again, it led to a lot of people saying, well, you know what, I want to learn for myself so I can better serve my community. So that was a really good outcome for that. But again, it was a long road for it to finally be totally squashed, and not going to happen. But they kept trying to find different ways to um, make it happen. And so, again, really grateful for those people that served. And I really think that was a big part of activism in my community, and seeing it really unfold and form, with that group. And and I hope that our 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 youth see that and say, hey, you know what, you're next to fill these shoes, and make sure that our land stays with us, and you take care of it.
Yes, one thing that I always pictured and imagined in my mind when I was listening to the interviews during, while transcribing, was there was this one story that was told. And well, I don't know if it was in the interview or if you were telling me, but it was of how there was this big meeting, and then afterward one of the guys, I believe, got approached by another individual who, I don't know if he was a lawyer or if it was something else, but he was kind of like, I believe he was either encouraging or letting him know that, what was happening, um that he was willing to help um them. I don't know if, do you remember that? Was it a lawyer?
Yeah, it was. And that was the thing too, is that through these articles that were published, whether it was, whatever local news outlet, and that they were telling like, okay, this is the latest update of what's going on. And so people, all of Tucson and surrounding areas were reading, you know um the battle, the fight that they were taking on. They, meaning my community, and those of the defenders of Matam land rights. And yeah, there were through Dr. Bunny Fontana, his friend reached out and said, "I've been reading about what's happening in Santa Vir, and I want to help." And so then Dr. Fontana brought that individual to one of those public meetings I think they were having, and so then introduced him to Mike Enos Butt and others from the group. And he was like, I am here to help. I'm a lawyer. I have experience, and so what can I do to you know help serve in this capacity. So whether it was, do you want me to be your lawyer, do you want me to like help you understand, like, you know the legal documents, like, however I want to be able to help. And there was a couple others too that did that as well. And I thought that was something that was really amazing, because then Mike was like, "Yes, please, like, we need, folks that understand, the legal jargon, and what we can do, as a people, and how to proceed, and everything of that sort." And so that individual, started to help them every step of the way, with the legal case that they built, and then representing them, and being there. And so I thought that was really amazing. And I think also too, with my community, where we're situated, definitely having those allies, and working with others that are not O'odham, or they're not Native or Indigenous, and working together. And even also too, when we talk, I know we're talking about land, but even talking about with um water, and then also to making sure that our traditional ways are upheld. And I'm referring to the Udall brothers, Stuart and Morris Udall, who were allies, and helped to make sure that we were able to continue to harvest, by that saguaro fruit in Saguaro National Park. And then Morris Udall helping to you know make sure that the Southern Arizona Water Rights Settlement Act was passed. But again, having these allies outside to come and help, and knowing that what was transpiring, especially with the land development, was wrong, and saying, that they shouldn't be doing that. They shouldn't be telling lies. They shouldn't, be trying to go around to all of these different people to get their input, and say, "Oh, well, this tribal leader said okay," and then have it pass. And so it just kind of even dates back to how things were done with treaties long ago. They'd go to the tribal leaders, and then they would say no, and then the government or whoever's serving for them to get those treaties signed, and then they would just find somebody, and promise them riches, or what have you, for them to sign. And so it felt like it was something similar, this tactic of like, oh, well, the group who should be really consulted are the Latis, because this is, whose land is going to be leased, and certainly also to the community with the tribal lands that are looking to be leased. But again, it was just going to all of these other people and groups and not going to the ones that it really mattered. So, and it was really interesting too within that, because it was my uncle Mike Rios that found out about it, and he happened to be at a community meeting, and he was like, "What do you mean this was approved?" And and he was starting to ask questions, and he's like, "I didn't know about this." And then he went to my grandma and asked her, and she didn't know. And then after that, it just spread like wildfire throughout the community, and everybody started going to each other's houses or calling each other, and to say, "Did you know about this?" And so, you know that the power of a community, right, coming together and informing each other, and then coming together to say, "Hey, we're gonna stop this because this isn't right."
Napoleon, did you have any questions or anything you wanted to add?
Um, it kind of just reflects back on how, like earlier when we were talking about the historical context, is like you were mentioning there was a lot of deceit and false narratives that there a lot of folks were coming in and promising one thing um, but not that wasn't reality. And so it just made me think on how like earlier how the farmers came in and just used up all the water and just took and took and took, and you saw the drought and everything. You saw weren't able to keep that sustainable, and then having to find other ways. And this with this, it's sort of like we'll just give you whatever, and then you can take it. But who knows what have happened, once they've came in, utilized it, given the money, and it just probably would have taken off. So that's where I see the really strength in the collaborative efforts of um, really foundational the activism that happened, and um, that impact of stories, like just because there was no media, right? There was only like limited amount of like folks having to know like this is going on and this is how you're going to be impacted. And it was like an autumn community member and autumn community members leading these initiatives versus someone else. The lawyer could have easily went by and be like, oh yeah, here's the legal ramifications. But it's like it's autumn community is like us doing it for ourselves and having that sort of mentorship of others who can really contribute. And I always feel like as time goes on, we won't have to rely on a lot of outside sources because we'll have that in our communities. Um, we'll have that sort of support within our communities because the amount of people doing that sort of work and from those historical contexts is to be in the present now, so we don't have to always be relying on our Metagon lawyers and stuff. We'll have autumn lawyers, and we'll be able to fulfill a lot of like what we try to accomplish as far as like protecting our land, water, and everything that we see that is important to us. I think like now what you mentioned like a couple of times, some of your presentations, like the border wall and everything, how that separates too. So I think it's a small part, but it expands so much in that sort of like organizing work and finding who those relatives are, finding the people, getting on the grounds and stuff. So I think that's what is really key to me is like the stuff that I find inspiring. Um, it doesn't matter how you go about it, whether it's politically, gathering people, organizing or voting or doing all these different things. There's always that sort of like initiative to keep going. And that's what you're mentioning, like keep going, you'll find your ways through it. So I thought those are just most of the really strong impacts that I saw out of it and just learning more about it. So thank you for sharing. I appreciate that.
Yeah, of course. And yeah, I think, also too, there was this pattern throughout all of these different events happening in my community where we'd come together to figure out what to do. because we as a people, that's what we do, that's who we are. It's described as communal, or as I refer to it, as the relationality, the relationships that we have with each other, and the importance of that consensus, that coming together to make those decisions. And that's what we did throughout time. And what we're talking about specifically, a group was formed to tackle this, to take this on, and whoever wanted to join could, and be part of it. And, it's very, inspiring to learn about what happened over time, but also to how community members from Sanavir stepped up in different ways. And yeah, certainly also too, we had help from, um, those that weren't O'odham or native or indigenous, but certainly led to others wanting to further their education and take a class or pursue a degree, which I think was really awesome. And even also during that time, having certain individuals step up to serve in leadership positions, one of which is our our chairman, the Senator District, Austin Nunez. He's been in office for as long as I've been living, and always, wondered about, why he ran, and everything. And it ties back to this land proposal. And so it was really interesting to make those connections too, and figure things out of, oh, okay, that's why, so and so is, also, that year, or why I finished my thought, but why so and so, ran. And during that election time, when that land proposal, that was the biggest number of um, individuals that had wanted to run for district uh, council, and also for chair and vice chair. And it was a way that the defenders of O'odham land rights were getting people into office, so they could fight back on, no, we don't want this. So again, interesting time, to be in Sanavir when all that transpired.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for sharing all about your work. But now that you are a newly minted graduate, what does your focus of work look like now?
That's a I think for me, I have this list of all these different ideas that I thought of and had conversations, with folks about. And so I just started writing them down, because there was, I started doing that because I had times where I would supposed to be writing, and then I start like, kind of taking a turn and focusing on, oh, this idea, would be really great as a project, or this or that. And my dissertation chair, Dr. Ron Trasser, would be like, remember, come back, stay focused. There'll be plenty of time after you're done. So I think now is going through that list, and seeking out, what I want to do. And, definitely a big part of it was to do presentations. I did some here and there, but, it's different when you're still working through it, right? And there's only so much you can share at those times. And then now that I'm done, and able to fully share what my dissertation research and paper is about, has been really awesome. I do serve as a speaker for Arizona Humanities, and they have a program. And so this is my second year with them, and being able to have folks reach out and say, hey, yeah, I have two different presentation topics I do and can do. And so it's great whenever folks reach out and say, come talk about your dissertation research. And so just being able to share, with what I think like an hour and a half we have when I do those presentations, is really great, and spark some really good questions afterwards. And so definitely continuing to do that. But I also want to as much as I love talking to adults and elders, I also want to turn my focus also to the K through 12 and doing more with as I say, our future leaders, and sharing with them in different ways about land and water, and the issues and why it's important for them to know about it. And so trying to find opportunities or projects or presentations, whatever, to do that with them. And so I really am looking to hopefully work with some teachers on the nation, and then also just like reaching out to folks and saying, hey, I am available for whatever you need, when it comes to the land and water environment. And so certainly that's something I on my list of what I want to do more of. And I think also too, um, uh, I do want to get out in the community more, because before that was another part to it too, is just I couldn't, and I was just like, as much as I want to go to this event, I am, on a deadline. I'm too tired. Like, I'm going to have to wait till next time around, or, maybe another event that's similar. So, definitely I think just going out and talking with folks and being present is something that I'm looking forward to doing. And, not saying, oh, well, I can go for an hour, but then really, thinking about what I need to do is really in the back of my mind, but fully going to things and enjoying them and talking with folks, and you know, um, and seeing what sparks from those conversations. Because there's so many times where I've just had like a quick conversation or discussion with someone, and it sparks this amazing idea, and we end up having this really great, collaboration. And that's another big part to it too, is more collaboration, with for example, Soro National Park, and then also Kit Peak National Observatory. Those are two that I have collaborations with and want to continue collaborating with them in different ways. And then certainly also too within my classes that I teach at Donathan Community College. Um, sharing more with land and water, and hopefully having some events on campus. And so again, it's just all these different ideas, and I just need to start going down the list and seeing, okay, what can I do, in the spring semester, or thinking long term, and wanting to definitely achieve all of those. But certainly also to I think publishing and exploring all of what that could entail is also something really big for me that I want to do. And there has been a couple people that have reached out and want to publish my work, so that's exciting. And seeing where that goes. And certainly too also presenting at conferences. That's one thing I really didn't get to do, is go to a lot of conferences. So I think now I want to look into those, and whether it's just attending, like I said, and mingling and networking, and getting to talk with folks, or actually presenting. So I, that I know, and that sounds like a lot, and it is, but at the same time, though, it's just all these things I've been thinking about, and wanting to do.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely, I think you feel you definitely have plenty of time. I mean, you're so, a pretty young person, and you've done so much, and you've went, from the bare essentials to to where you're at now. And for anybody who is interested, I was able to watch your one of your presentations online, on the Amarind Foundation, at Amarind, that's Amerind Foundation, on their YouTube channel. If you're interested and you want to watch her presentation, it is Caretakers of the Land, History of Land and Water in Sanavir Community. So, um, And just thank you so much for being here with us, and sharing all of your work, what you're doing now, what your future goals are. We absolutely appreciate the time that you've taken to be here with us and to share your story with the listeners as well. And of course, if you ever need anything from us, feel free to reach out. We're always here as well. Um, Napoleon, do you have any last thoughts?
Yeah, just thank you so much for being a part of this conversation. I think this is so beneficial to our listeners, to me, to our team, and just like anybody in general interested in wanting to know about Autumn. Just a very small snippet of who we are. I mean, we can always talk about things closed doors, but that's for us. And so that's the cool part. But also just like in academia, and all these other different ways that we're being seen. Sometimes it is lonely being Autumn here on this side. Even though there's a lot of U of A folks on our team, but I definitely find that it doesn't matter where you are. There's always someone always listening and wanting to know about our community. So I thank you again for your contributions. Um, and yeah, just that it will live and it will still grow. And I know this is probably not the last time we'll talk. And I know you're always about, like you were mentioning before, because I do that too. Like, oh, this is a great opportunity, and this is another great opportunity, and oh, there's like this over here too. And they're like, whoa, whoa, whoa. That was kind of like my thing during my thesis. It's like, oh, I want to talk about this. And they're like, no, focus, narrow it down. So, and that's how creative we are, and that's how strong we are. So I thank you so much, and sharing that there's always tomorrow. So thank you for sharing that, because I think that's so important, and those listeners to take that as well. There's always tomorrow, and might not academia might not be for you, or community college could be for you. There's always tomorrow to plan that and make that journey. So thank you so much.
And really quick, Giselle, if somebody did want to reach out to you to read your dissertation, how can they do that?
You can email me. My best email to reach me is drjacelleramon-sauberan at gmail.com. So that's JACELLER, S as in Sam, AU, B as in boy, ERAN. And it's all one word, at gmail.com. And I'm pretty good at, replying pretty quickly. And so, just reach out if you want to talk further, if you want a copy of my dissertation, if you want me to come present, what have you. I want to be a resource for people. I want to be a role model for folks, and certainly if I can do it, you can too. And I want to help in any way I can. Whether that is sharing my knowledge with an audience that might not know much about Thanatam history and culture, or specifically history of land and water in Sanavir, or if you want help with pursuing community college or university, I'm here to help. And, I want our people to be successful in whatever, interests you. And so if I can be a helping hand with being a mentor or sharing, more about my experiences, you know, reach out. Let me know how, again, I can help you.
Thank you so much. Um, did you have any like last shout outs that you want to give?
Sure, I want to shout out to my family for all of their love and support. My partner Jesse, our daughter Lydia, who is going to be 5 in 10 days, so it's really exciting. Can't believe it. And then to all of my nieces, so Bella, Zavida, Azalea, Layla, Amarisa, my other niece Sally, and my nephew Reyes, and my sister Jeline, brother-in-law Ken, and for again all their love and support, and especially my nieces. Anytime I was just all stressed out, and then they'd say something and we just all start laughing, and having that laughter, that good medicine, and reminding me, to again, there's always tomorrow, but also to to enjoy time with family. So but yeah, and also to thank you for having me be here with you all and sharing about my journey as a PhD student and Autumn scholar and teacher as well. I always like to share because again, I want people to know that they can do this too, and um, hopefully, what we talked about today is inspiring to others. Supper.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for being here, as well as to my co host, Napoleon, for being here with us as well. And to all you listeners, thanks once again for listening in. Spread the word. Dr. J is ready to. Come to your place to speak or, read up on her work or check out the YouTube video on what she's done and worked so hard for. So, thank you all for listening in right here on Dawn Autumn Young Voices.